So today we're going to talk about something a little bit different as a different aspect of sound design, but I would argue that it's still just as important as technique when making sounds, and that is keeping yourself organized throughout projects. I've ran into a bunch of issues previously when working on shorter game projects where I would have different file names, so some would be spaces, some would be hyphens, some would be underscores, and that would kind of screw up the programmers when they're implementing sounds. I would have different file types. I'd have some files be WAV files and some be MP3s of different rates and all that kind of stuff. So I decided to try to get myself into a better habit of keeping organized with spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. The spreadsheet took me about 10-15 minutes to kind of get the formatting for, and then from there it was just filling stuff out. So it's not like it's going to uh, be a ton of extra work that would take you away from sound design or whatever, but it in the long run is going to save you so much time in having to go back to projects and re-export things because your file names are wrong or your file types are wrong or you just forgot sounds. So at the very top here I have project settings. So I'm making sure that every single project that I open in Logic is 44.1 24-bit. The specifics of whether you choose 44 or 48 or 24-bit or 16-bit isn't as important as making sure that every single time you do it in this particular game, it's the same. Same with file type. I'm using MP3 here, but if you use WAV, you do that, but just make sure you can maintain consistency across all of the sound files within your project. I have the rate and the encoding as well, just similar things, all about consistency. I have the name in the far left column, and I also have this neat little freezing rows and columns to make sure that, if my list gets ridiculous and I can keep scrolling, I can still understand that name, file name, family, status is all kind of at the top here. So the name is obviously kind of the standard name just for organization's sake. But then with the file name, it's going to be a bit different for my particular case. I have underscores spacing out different major words here. So with the battlefield ambience, I'm going to list it under the ambience category. So it's an ambience here with ambience underscore battlefield. And so if I have different ambiences for different places, I'll have ambience underscore home or ambience underscore city or whatever. And then same with UI elements. And then kind of I have this little spacer here because here's where all of my unit sounds are. This is like a strategy game. And so you have tons and tons of different units. Obviously, I have a ton more units. This is only 4 of 26 we have currently, so I would fill this out with all the other units after. But I only need the 4 to kind of give this example. I have their name as the front half, and then what this specific sound is as the second half. And as well, the important thing is to maintain or to make sure you have some amount of shortness to these, because if you have Wood Elf Hunters take damage as the file name, every time you want to type that in, it's going to get really, really annoying. So Elf Hunters underscore hit is a good way to shorten your names and make it easier on yourself and the programmers when you go into implementing sounds. Family as well is another thing. So if you want to sort by it, you can sort by the different type of sounds, just to kind of get an idea of what kind of sounds you need to make more of. As well as this would help when doing folder structure as well. So if I want to have all my battlefield sounds in the same folder and then all my UI sounds in a similar folder and kind of keep my unit moves in the same folder or base it based on the unit itself. These are just different options, and it's just a different way to keep organized. Status is a big one as well. This is how you can keep track of what things you've already done or still need to do. If you're 3/4 of the way through your project and you're only about halfway done with your sounds, you really need to kick it into high gear. It just helps visualize how much stuff you still need to do. Obviously, I've been in this project for not that long, and so I've just recently started, and so I'm not super worried with the large amount of incomplete sounds I have here. Description is kind of an important thing. I kind of have 2 different ways I use description here. First off, I'll put notes for where the sound will go or what the sound is kind of representing. And then usually the other note is what kind of hints or suggestions I'm making to my future self for when I go in and actually design the sound. So as I was drafting this up, I thought, okay, well, a battlefield ambient sound, I definitely want some light wind sounds, maybe a couple of birds here and there. And because of the different terrain types, maybe some rocks falling would sound cool. I also have kind of notes from other games or different ideas that I'm going to try to take as inspiration. So with my Frost Troll attack, it's obviously going to be throwing a large icy boulder at the enemy. And then I have a suggestion, okay, well, the Bullymog throwers in Borderlands 2 are kind of in the same vein of what I'm trying to do. So maybe listen to them and kind of get an idea of what they're kind of doing, and then use that as inspiration for when I make my own sound. Loop versus one shot is pretty important because that is coming into play when you implement the sound into whatever your engine is. Obviously, an ambience. When I made this ambience, I wanted to make sure it infinitely looped perfectly, and it does, so I made sure that it's listed as a loop here. So when you go into Unity or whatever, you set, is loop, and then you set that to true. One shot is the opposite of that. It only plays once. You don't want every time you draw a card to have a card draw sound going flick, 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 flick over and over and over. So you're going to list that as a one shot. I have options here where, depending on the direction I go with these, so like mana regen, so at the end of each turn, a player will regenerate their mana, and I want to either have that be like a ticking up sound for each time they like get in a new number, and that is an option, or I could just have it instantly, okay, here's your new number of mana, and then have it just be one sound. So depending on if it's just one sound, it'll be one shot, but if it's going to incrementally count up, it'll loop, and then I'll have it be programmed in to stop when it's done. As well as for movement, if your game is tile-based like mine, you really only need to do a run cycle, or, for sounds once per tile, because if you have it, spread out, you're just adding extra space on each file, and you only need to do it once. So that's kind of the purpose of loop versus one shot, is just for implementation's sake. And then lastly, this is the big part, is comments and feedback. So maintaining an open dialogue with your team on the sounds that you've made is super duper important. So if, for example, my teammate goes in, and so I have a note here to right click insert comment, so they know not to like type in the category, but like insert comment, because there's benefits to that. So if a teammate says, sounds good, but maybe less birds, and so I add that as a comment. So I see, my teammate put a comment in here. He wants more birds. Yeah, I definitely agree on that. So what I can go is change it, add a new file in, and say, okay, well, now I brought the birds down. Let's go ahead and resolve that, because I took that into consideration, and that's good, and it's done. It's just different ways to keep yourself on track and organized, and if you know that there's a comment here, you can address it, and it will only go away if you make it go away. So this sheet as a whole is just helping me a ton with staying organized with my team, and I think that it's really important for larger projects to keep yourself organized and consistent, because there's lots of opportunities for things to kind of go haywire with your organization. And I hope you learned something from this. Feel free to copy this. I will try to put some sort of thing in the description where you can kind of just copy the template. I will try to figure that out. But thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something.